Welcome to Country Fried Rock, where we have conversations with songwriters for real music lovers who enjoy context and musical connection. We are Country Fried Rock. I'm Sloan Spencer. On today's Country Fried Rock, I talk with Amy Ray, the Georgia songwriter, who is also half of the duo, the Indigo Girls. She has a brand new solo record exploring her country and Appalachian roots called Goodnight Tender, and we have a great conversation about all kinds of music that influences Amy Ray. Today on Country Fried Rock. My guest today on Country Fried Rock is Amy Ray with a new solo record coming really soon called Goodnight Tender. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you with us. I'm going to try really hard not to be super fangirl as we talk today, but I am from Atlanta.
All right.
And you were one of the first live bands I was allowed to go see.
Oh, wow.
So it's exciting to hear how your career has evolved over the years, and it's continuing to go in new places. Tell me about your upcoming solo record.
Well, I have always wanted, well, not always, but for about the last 12 years, I've been kind of writing some country songs or like Southern music, Appalachian gospel, sort of in that area. And I would just kept putting them aside and saying, one day I'm going to make a record that's just kind of a Southern roots record with some traditional country on it. And I would throw a couple on my punk. I have solo records that are also like punk and rock. Those kind of records I've been making since about 2000. In between Indigo Girls. So Indigo Girls are still going strong, but I just have this other thing I want to do a lot. And one of the things I've always wanted to do is make a record that's more traditional country and Appalachian and gospel. So I finally hit my mark as far as songwriting went and had some time, and so I pulled a bunch of people into the studio and created a couple of different bands and made a record.
You mentioned Appalachian gospel.
I think some people know it as bluegrass gospel and or gospel bluegrass, and maybe associated heavily with like the Carter family and the Stanley brothers. But yeah, to me, like that music, I don't know if it's because I was raised in the South and always went to church camp and we sang a lot with our guitars and we did a lot of the standard kind of gospel sort of Appalachian songs, or what it is, but I relate to it, and outside of whether part of my faith or spirituality, but just I relate to it in a way that's, I think, cultural as well, and it just resonates with me. So I find it to be really uplifting and kind of fun, and, there's so many songs that are like in that family, and so many that you can learn and play, and with 3 chords.
Right.
So it's fun to jam on them, too, with people. To me, that's the part of music that is such a treasure, is that when you can, that populist kind of notion, and when you can kind of all sit around, like my family all sits around at Thanksgiving and Christmas. My niece and nephews are older now, they're like in their teens, and they all play instruments. So we just, it's so much easier if the song is easy. So we pick songs with 3 chords and then learn them, in a few minutes and then play them together kind of thing.
We have a large history of what I call Southern expatriates. So people from the South who then leave because they're like, oh, I hate the South, so confining. And then 20 years later, they find themselves coming back.
Yeah, it's a magnet or something. It's like a tether. It's like your mom. You're always going to have to check back in. There's a certain radius that you're allowed to go, and then some people can go further and some people can't. I've always liked living here. I know it's oppressive, and I know it can be, there's such a brutal history here. But I find the brutal history also has hand in hand with the history of sort of triumph of the culture in a way that's not racist. The parts of the culture that are good and rich and shared by many different people of classes and race. So I find it to be a place that generates a lot of fodder in my life, generally for art and thinking and contemplation and stories, and it's rich for me. And I guess, I understand. I have friends that also have moved and they can't deal, but I just have never felt that way. Because there's something core, for me that's attached to it that can take all the bad stuff, and I know it. I'm not in denial about it, but I'm not going to let it take the South away from me,
You can find Country Fried Rock on great radio stations like 91.1 The Globe in Goshen, Indiana, Wildman Steve Radio Network from Auburn, Alabama, around the world. Online from Texas at Root Hog Radio, part of Radio Free Americana, from Mobile, Alabama on the Mod Mobilian Radio Network. Listen in Georgetown, California at KFOK 96.1, from Kodiak, Alaska on KMXT, KSRQ, Grand Forks, Minnesota, KKRN, Round Mountain, California, KDRP, solar-powered radio from Dripping Springs, Texas, WALW, Moulton, Alabama, and other great stations like CJXF, Calgary, Canada. Country Fried Rock is committed to supporting the musicians, making the music we love. Help them out by buying their music, and help us out at no extra cost by purchasing through the links on our website. Looking forward to heading to Rhythm and Blooms in gorgeous Knoxville, Tennessee this April. Hope to see y'all there. We will be hanging out, catching folks like Shovels and Rope, Dom Flemons, formerly of the Carolina Chocolate Drops, and the David Mayfield Parade. Lots more on this amazing lineup, Rhythm and Blooms, the crossroads of American roots music. Rhythm and Blooms, arts, culture, and natural beauty.
Hey, this is Amy Ray. Check out my new record, Goodnight Tender, on amy-ray.com.
Where do you think that music fits in with that?
I think that there's something about music that binds people together that transcends the differences, of course. Like in a town I live in, Dahlonega, Georgia, which is kind of in North Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's a big bluegrass scene, and I've lived here for about 20 years. And when I was a kid, I used to come up here and go to camp. It's a very important place to me. But there'll be like a bluegrass festival and maybe a gospel jam, and different people get up and play. And in that moment, no one really cares where you come from or your spirituality or your color or anything in that moment of music. Now, you know, when it's over, there's probably a lot of bigoted things and things that don't feel good if you're gay or you're Mexican or African American or, you know, all the different people that live up here, native folks. But there's a moment when it all goes away, and it's kind of a beautiful moment. And I think it's a moment that you hope will extend past the tent, you know, the gospel tent, out into the world, because you hope that people are changed by it, you know. And I think some people are. I think it's transformative, you know, and I don't believe in attaching politics and cultural demands onto all music. Some music you should just be able to, like, everybody interprets it their own way and you all enjoy it. You know, and this is coming from someone that writes a lot of political songs.
Right.
But I think that there's depth in some of the traditional bluegrass and gospel and country and kind of Appalachian songs and, like, all the Carter family songs, which it's an amazing catalog, you know, of songs. And within those stories, there's undertones of all sorts of little things going on and metaphors and many layers, you know. There's a lot to draw from and a lot to learn from them, even if you're not directly saying, like, oh, this means this, this, and this, leaking into you, and you're being changed by it. So, I mean, hopefully. I mean, I'm sure that there's groups of folks that are full of hate and for other people and use music to kind of galvanize that, but I don't think that's the proper way to use music, so I just try to, you know, accept it and move on.
I didn't realize you were in the Dahlonega areas where we would go, like, Etowah River and Panning for Gold and all that sort of stuff. It's a beautiful area. Yeah,
it's really, really, I love it up here.
Boy, I can imagine. I love talking with people who have a long history of both a band of sorts and then a solo career, because it gives them different creative writing outlets. And especially for you with all the different styles of music that you continue to write. I don't want to put a label on it, but it sounds like you're a little bit of a workaholic, maybe?
I don't think I'm totally a workaholic, but yeah, no, I am a workaholic. I should just admit it. But it's not work. I guess it's not really. It's not totally work to me.
Passion.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah, it's not totally work to me. So I guess it's like I just have these different capacities for different kinds of stuff that, and it all. I'm not saying this right, but it's a tapestry. And the Indigo Girls are part of it, and my punk rock stuff is part of it, and then this country stuff is part of it, and it all works together and makes sense to me and informs each other. So it's hard for me to take one piece of that out and have the other pieces make sense anymore. It's definitely something that I think about, like when I'm overextended and I'm like, God, I just got to cut something out. And then I'm like, well, what could I cut out, you know?
Right. Creatively, though, do you get on a kick about a certain thing and have to pursue that, or are they all happening at the same time?
They're a little bit happening at the same time, but I'd say when I'm writing, just generally, I'm just writing. And then songs start to be thrown into one pile or the other in my head, and it all makes sense. Sometimes, like, for instance, like now, I've done this record. I'm thinking about the next Indigo Girl record because I know that we need to make it in the summer. And so when I'm writing, I am kind of, like now, my gears are switched a little bit. Although, if I write something that seems like a country or a punk song, I'll try to, like, get as far as I can with it, put it down on tape recorder, make sure I have it documented, and then I'll move back to the Indigo Girls song. I do that when I know I need to, like I compartmentalize it. But if I have a moment when, like a 6-month period when nothing's going to be due and there's no project on the horizon, when I write, I'm just writing.
With Goodnight Tender, what was the process for getting it into recording?
I knew with this kind of music that I wanted to work with tape first and foremost. And so the first thing I did was think about where I wanted to work. And I've worked at Echo Mountain in Asheville, North Carolina a lot. I like that studio, and their tape machines are really good and in really good shape. And, they're kept up really well, and they have like a technician on site. So it's kind of like, to me, like one of the best places to record analog. I was like, I'm going to have 7 days to get 12 songs done. And so everything's got to be working really well. So I'm going to go with a studio that might cost a little bit more,
right,
but I'm going to save money in the end. So the first thing I did was kind of get that straight in my head and then find the time that the studio was available, like some different times. And then I had a couple of anchor sort of musicians that I'd been talking to about working on the record and created like a central sort of core kind of traditional band, country band. And then, as I was the month leading up to, or 2 months leading up to that, I found other people to play and created another little combination of players to do like 4 songs that would be not as traditional but still have the country element, but they would bring in this slightly different flavor. There's a lot of different directions you can go, but like I go down one road, and as I'm going down that, other things appear to me, and I just try to like really take that into consideration and be like, well, I'm at this songwriter show with Phil Cook. We're jamming on my new songs. He's sounding really amazing. I should just ask him to play on the record. Like just trying to take note of what's going on around me and take advantage of it.
Country Fried Rock is committed to helping prevent musician suicide. For the last 2 years, our official charity has been Nucci's Space, a nonprofit organization removing barriers to mental health care for the music community of Athens, Georgia. This model program addresses everything from the need for affordable rehearsal space to loaner gear, as well as direct mental health services and primary care for musicians. We've got a ton of ways you can help them out at countryfriedrock.bandcamp.com. 2 incredible album compilations, baby onesies, check it all out. Get some great music for yourself or for a friend and make a difference. So far this year, y'all have helped pay for the services for an entire year for a musician in need. Let's keep going. Every dollar goes directly to helping keep music alive.
Hey, this is Amy Ray on Country Fried Rock.
So there were more life opportunities.
I knew I wanted to work with Jeff Fielder, who ended up playing like dobro and bass and banjo and electric guitar and a lot of instruments on the record, because I had played with him with another songwriter, Lindsay Fuller, who's a great songwriter. He was playing with her for a long time, and I just kept thinking, I want to play with that guy sometime. So then Jim Brock on drums. And those are the 2 people that I knew in my head for the last couple of years that I wanted to have on this record. So other than that, Allison Brown, the banjo player, gave me the name of Matt Smith, who played pedal steel for me. He gave me the stand-up bass player's suggestion. And then our manager's son plays really great fiddle and is a punk rocker too, so I thought it'd be fun to have him in to kind of get that young fiddle with that slight edge to it sound. And then I was talking to Phil, about a friend Phil Cook, who plays in a band called Megaphone up in North Carolina. And him and his brother do all these different projects, and they jam with people, and we were jamming, and they sounded amazing. And then we were like, let's do 4 songs together, just put a band together. And then it just so happened that Justin Vernon from Bon Iver was going to be in town visiting Phil and emailed me and was like, can I come over? And so it was like, you just kind of have to let some things happen and go with it, because great things present themselves after you've already made your plans.
Right.
And you got to take them,
That's right. 12 songs in 7 days. Was that all continuous, or was that over 2 different sessions?
5 days with the band that was like my central core country band, and that was 2 days left, and Phil Cook, Brad Cook, Heather McIntyre, and Justin Vernon, and a drummer named Terry Lauder, 2 days to do 4 songs. And then Heather sang some harmonies on the songs I had recorded with the other group. So it was 14 hours a day, 7 days straight. Yeah. My friend Brian Spicer, sound engineer now for front of house for Tedeschi Trucks band, he was doing sound for Indigo Girls for about 5 years. And we've done a lot of little recording projects together, and he loves tape. And I was like, you got to do this record with me and be my engineer because you love tape so much. The people at Echo Mountain, they are like the experts. They can fix it. They can make it run smoothly. I have total confidence in them. They can be part of the session and be like, your levels need to be. That engineer was a guy named John Ashley, just sort of that sonic guy that gets the great sounds and mics things a great way. So I didn't feel any nervousness about that at all. And that's what you need to have. We had to spend our energy on getting the arrangement together pretty quickly. And so the energy just kind of went into the moment. And when you're working on a record like this, I always tell people, if you're going to do stuff live, go to a studio that, you may have to spend extra money, but, it's going to be worth it because you're not going to have to fix stuff and things are going to sound good and you won't have to spend extra time mixing or mastering or any of those things that cost a lot of money. So, you get the initial step right. That's why, I think it's good to be confident in the first step. When you're used to Pro Tools, it's hard to get it. We transferred into Pro Tools to mix, because our mixer, Trina Shoemaker, mixed in Pro Tools. I wanted to use her as a mixer because she's so great. So we did everything in analog except for maybe a couple of overdubs that we had to do in Pro Tools because we ran out of tracks. Yeah, if you're doing a hybrid, or you have to be very disciplined to not do that.
Right.
We have to pretend that Pro Tools doesn't exist. We can't tune a bunch of stuff. We can't do a bunch of crazy edits. We can splice tape together and do whole takes together like they did in the old days, but
right.
We cannot be going down that other road because we're going to take forever, and we should have just started in Pro Tools if we're going to do that. Because I work in Pro Tools. I like Pro Tools, but I wanted to have I wanted these parameters for this project, you know.
And there's an expectation when it's like, this is it.
Well, yeah, but it's a good expectation, you know. It makes you feel good, and it's not a bad thing. It's like a sort of nervousness that makes you get the performance.
Do you have plans to release it on vinyl?
Yeah, it's definitely coming out on vinyl.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Were you involved in the visual plan for it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. A friend of mine does really great art. We created like an old-style country cover. I did a bunch of crazy photos and a bunch of different outfits and stuff and positions and against the green screen. And then she took that picture out and she created a whole environment around me and created this really beautiful package that's kind of tipping our hat to the older style of country packages.
Vinyl does allow for that whole visual and tactile thing.
Yeah.
Do you have plans to tour behind it, or how will that work for you?
Yeah, I'm going to just work in the gaps between Indigo Girls stuff. So I've got 3 shows, Durham, Asheville, and Atlanta in January, and then I'm going to do like a Nashville time period, and then I'm going to do some New York, Northeast stuff, and then I'll do like a Northwest. I'm going to just move around throughout the year and just fit in like 3 or 4 shows here and there. And then we're going to be on Mountain Stage on April 6th.
Yay!
So that's going to be really awesome.
Oh, neat. They just celebrated their 30th anniversary, I believe.
I know, it's great.
That is fantastic.
That's a big opportunity. I'm really happy about that.
Oh, that's so cool. I've gotten to know those guys over the last year or so, and just really,
great
such
folks.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And when you look back at who they've brought to the public over 30 years, it's like, wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, REM was on it. Like,
crazy.
You know?
Crazy. Georgia folks. I mean, just nuts. Country Fried Rock is super excited to now be available in both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. Download it for free. Find us on iTunes, Spreaker, Podfeed, Player FM, Blueberry, Stitcher, Gigadial, Digital Podcast, and some great apps including Agogo and Swell. Wherever you listen, you'll find Country Fried Rock. Never miss an episode. One of my family's favorite music festivals is Albino Skunk Fest, every spring and fall in beautiful Greer, South Carolina, halfway between Greenville and Spartanburg. Bring a camper, bring a tent, bring your family. It's a whole lot of fun. Get your tickets now, albinoskunk.com.
Hey, Sloan, it's Amy Ray.
When someone has their own label, that means something totally different to every single person I've ever spoken with.
I've had this label, Damon Records, since 1989. We started that, and then the record actually came out in 90, and it was a punk band called Ellen James Society.
Yeah.
And I started the label after we got signed to Epic, and I just wanted to keep doing indie stuff and develop that kind of community perspective on music around here and focus on Southern bands. So we did mostly Southern releases. We did about 60 records, and then in like 2005, I really pulled back and started just doing my own projects through the label and just selling the catalog of what we had already put out, you know, or maybe that was 2007. The label is going. It's just that the records that I've put out have been my record. And before, everything I put out was everybody else's record. And then I'll probably put out some other people's records in the coming years. There was a little bit of time where I was like, I want to figure out, like, you know, if this is something that's really good for the artist or if artists should just be trying to put their own stuff out right now because they've got the tools. But I think they're still really relevant, and especially if you have a good label and can really focus on the artist and stuff. So it's still going, and we're redesigning the website. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
You still are involved with mentoring emerging musicians. Where is that for you?
Well, I guess it's mentoring, but it's just like I'm a fan of, I really like to hear new music and what, you know, upcoming people are doing, and regardless of age, what new people that are doing new things, you know, and the label was definitely an outlet for me for that, of putting out other people's records and discovering new music and creating festivals and little shows and doing things with a lot of different bands. But the mentoring works both ways, I can say that. And me and Emily, we have a lot of friends open for us, and we'll discover a new band that we really like and take them out on the road for a while and get them going. And they definitely influence us too, you know, and inspire us and teach us things about different ways of looking at harmony or playing or whatever, you know. And so there's been bands over the years, definitely, that we've toured with that has been a mentoring situation that's gone both ways. But it's very important. I think that's how you keep your creative spark, is to listen to what other people are doing and share music and pass it around proverbial campfire.
Is there anything that's exciting for you with that right now?
There's a great band that Emily and I toured with a lot called the Shadow Boxers, who are from Atlanta, and they're a cross-pollination between like rock and soul and rootsies. It's like Prince and the band. It's crazy. And it's 5 guys. They're really, really good. And they're doing their thing. They got a record out, and they're out there playing around, and they've been great to play with. And so that was kind of the most recent thing that we were involved in for over the year, I guess.
What else do you have on the horizon with the new record coming out?
Just playing shows, and with this record, there's a lot of possibilities because, I can go out and play some songwriter shows just by myself, or me and Jeff can hit the road, and he can just play dobro with me, or I can take the whole band and we can do stuff. So, and then also there's all the different people that played on it, like Phil and Brad and Heather and Justin and stuff, and so we can jam too and do some stuff together. And there's a lot of possibilities with this record to play with different people, and so that's one thing that's fun to me, and it will go beyond just this year, so that's good.
What do you see that's working with whatever the heck is going on with music these days?
Well, I think there's a few things that obviously work, that always have worked. Well, one thing in particular is that bands, for most bands, that aren't going to just be like a video-based band, like that just does YouTube videos and stuff and gets their fame like that. But for bands that are like, we're going to write songs, we're going to keep writing songs, we're going to put records out, you always need to get out there and play live, and that's never going to change. And so that adds to your equation no matter where you are or what your plans are or anything. If you're playing live, you're doing something for yourself. If you're writing songs, you're doing something for yourself. So songwriting and getting out there and playing, it's still the secret ingredient. But I think for the DIY, YouTube has been super helpful to expose bands that are super creative in other ways beyond just their songwriting, that have a visual aesthetic that's so incredible and a creativity that gives you different dimension to what they're doing as far as songs go. I think having distribution networks that are very accessible has been really helpful to new artists that are putting their own, that don't have money, that are trying to put their own music out there, and now they have access to ways of doing that, which is amazing. The trick is there's so much out there now you got to figure out how to differentiate yourself. But that's what songwriting's about, and you got to work on it. Keep working on it your whole life, and that never changes. That's definitely one of those things. Radio used to be so, in the late 70s and the early 80s, there was this moment of college radio and public radio that was really pretty awesome. And that lasted for a while, and then all of a sudden deregulation happened, and everything became so corporate, and it was like very oppressive, and you just couldn't hear anything. You couldn't hear very much, variety. But now we have podcasts and internet radio stations and websites and blogs, and there's just so much more available to people, and even the gatekeepers of old cannot hold back the voices now, which I think is definitely true. And so you can discover a lot of stuff, even with Sirius XM, which is kind of like Big Brother watching you in some ways, but in other ways it's like, oh my God, the programming is amazing. I mean, you can hear so much good stuff.
Really appreciate your time, Amy.
Oh, that's great.
Perfect.
I appreciate it.
Be
Thanks
well.
so much, Sloan.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Country Fried Rock, music uncovered. Find our full playlist at countryfriedrock.org. Our 2014 bed music is from Jack Logan and Scott Baxendale. Their most recent album together, Bones in the Desert. The song you hear is only available to benefit Nucci's Space. You can buy it at countryfriedrock.bandcamp.com. Our Country Fried Rock stinger is from Steve Soto and the Twisted Hearts. Country Fried Rock. Copyright 2013 by Lily Pad Productions. All rights reserved. Country Fried Rock is a partnership with the nonprofit Florence Regional Arts Alliance. Your donations to this program are tax deductible to the extent you are eligible under U.S. law. Country Fried Rock radio programs are distributed to public radio through the Public Radio Exchange, prx.org.
Ever he been helping us some country fried rock.